Adrian Ifedici Chukura sat at the head of the table, fingers loosely clasped, eyes steady as he watched her dismantle every doubt in the room. One by one, his board members and potential investors leaned forward, pens forgotten, laptops abandoned, utterly transfixed by the clarity of her presentation. Her financial analysis was crisp, confident, rooted in data but alive with vision. She spoke of scalable growth, strategic partnerships, market penetration beyond borders, and risk mitigation with a calm authority that left no room for condescension or interruption. This was exactly why he had insisted on her being here. Adrian had inherited his father's hospitality business at 23, hotels built on reputation and legacy. He had expanded into transportation with quiet determination, turning logistics into profit, structure into systems. Now he stood on the edge of something bigger: aviation, restaurant chains, an empire that would outlive him. He wanted to hire her small but formidable consulting firm, but first he needed his board to see what he had always seen, and he needed an opportunity to spend time with her so that she'd see him as a man that deserved her. And she was giving him that moment effortlessly. A slow smile curved his lips as she awed them, dismantling objections before they were fully formed. Tokoni Leela Noah, the woman he had been in love with since he was 13. His mind drifted, unbidden, back to the first day he had ever seen her. She had come to the school to register her younger brother. She was only 18 then, yet she carried herself with a composure that had immediately set her apart. The school administration had tried their usual inefficiencies, missing documents, unnecessary delays, thinly veiled impatience, but Oni had handled it all with remarkable maturity. She hadn't raised her voice or begged. She had calmly produced every required document, politely but firmly corrected an error in the admissions form, and insisted, respectfully, on her brother's right to timely enrollment. When the administrator attempted to brush her off, she had smiled, thanked her, and requested to see the admissions head instead. No drama, no fear, just quiet strength. Adrian had watched from a distance, utterly captivated, not just by what she said, but how she said it. She knew who she was even then. And then he had truly seen her. She was stunning. Her dark skin glowed, luminous and rich, like it held sunlight within it. Her long hair fell down her back in soft, effortless waves, framing a face that was both gentle and striking. But it was her eyes that had undone him. Deep, expressive, and intense. Eyes that felt like you could drown in them if you stared too long, not because they were demanding, but because they were endlessly thoughtful. 13-year-old Adrian hadn't known the word for it then. All he knew was that something in him had shifted. Now, years later, as Oni concluded her presentation and the room erupted into stunned silence before measured applause, Adrian leaned back in his chair, heart steady, certainty absolute. While he had been becoming, she had been becoming too. By the time the applause finally died down, Adrian realized his pen had been moving without his permission. He glanced down at the notepad in front of him and froze. The word mine had been scribbled there, over and over again, at least 10 times. He exhaled slowly, shutting the pad as though it might betray him. Across the room, she packed up with the same efficient grace she brought to everything, stacking her notes, sliding her tablet into its sleeve, unbothered by the lingering stares of men who had just realized they'd underestimated her. Then she turned, caught his eye, and flashed him a bright, effortless smile. It stole his breath. Does she have any idea what she does to me? He wondered. She walked out, heels clicking with quiet confidence, leaving behind a room still buzzing and Adrian anchored to his seat by memories he never quite outgrew. Ebby's voice echoed in his mind, clear as it had been years ago. "Make yourself scarce in our house." He had been 15 then, Ebby 14, sitting on the low wall outside their compound, legs dangling, pretending the words didn't matter. "If Oni ever sees you as a brother, she'll never date you," Ebby had continued seriously.
At first, Adrian had bristled. He thought Evie was being possessive, that he didn't want him anywhere near his sister. But then it started happening. "Kiddo," she'd called him once, ruffling his hair with that infuriating fondness. Something in him had dropped, heavy and final. Evie had been right. Staying away after that had been the hardest thing he'd ever done. He avoided their house, avoided lingering conversations, avoided her, except life had a cruel way of crossing paths anyway. He watched from a distance as different men came and went, each one a fresh test of restraint. He endured it, jaw tight, fist clenched, imagining, more than once, gouging their eyes out simply for looking at her. Evie, ever confident, had insisted none of those relationships would last. Adrian hadn't shared that faith. All he had known was the waiting, and the wanting, and the quiet, stubborn hope that one day, when he was no longer a boy, when he was finally a man, she might look at him and see something other than kiddo. He remembered the night he had finally broken and told his mother everything. She had listened without interrupting, her hands warm around his, her expression soft with understanding. When he was done, she smiled and said, "If she's meant for you, Adrian, it will all work out. Don't rush what time is still shaping." Those words had stayed with him. Evie's advice had followed soon after, given with a seriousness that felt far older than his years. "Build something that's yours," Evie had said. "Don't rely on what your parents already laid down. Oni will find that more attractive than a man who had everything handed to him." Looking back now, Adrian shook his head slightly. Evie had been far too mature, far too insightful. He pushed open the doors to his office. The space was unmistakably his, ultra-modern, expansive, deliberate. Floor-to-ceiling glass framed a sweeping view of the city skyline, sunlight spilling across polished marble floors. Sleek steel accents softened into warm wood panels, the balance between power and restraint carefully curated. A minimalist desk sat perfectly centered, its surface uncluttered except for a single tablet and a fountain pen. Abstract art adorned the walls, bold, intentional strokes that mirrored ambition. Everything in the room whispered control, vision, and quiet dominance. And she was there, waiting. Oni rose the moment she saw him, her face lighting up with genuine warmth. Before he could say a word, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. "Adrian," she laughed softly, "it's been ages." He froze for half a heartbeat before returning the embrace, her familiar scent stirring memories he had kept carefully locked away. "Too long," he said, meaning far more than the words conveyed. "I can't believe how long it's been," she continued as they pulled apart. "You just disappeared. One minute you were everywhere, and then nothing. Do you know how many times I asked Evie about you?" He smiled, masking the truth that he had never really disappeared at all. He'd been watching from a distance, keeping tabs, waiting. They sat, and the room seemed to shrink as they slipped easily into old rhythms, laughing about school days, shared acquaintances, memories of Evie's stubbornness, and their endless debates. She shook her head at one point, mock accusatory. "You could have checked in, you know. I barely saw you for years." "I know," he replied softly. "Life happened." She accepted that easily, unaware of how much discipline those years had required. When the conversation lulled, Adrian leaned back slightly, studying her, confident, brilliant, unchanged in all the ways that mattered. "Let me take you to dinner," he said smoothly, "to celebrate you completely charming my board." She laughed, waving it off. "You exaggerate." "Indulge me," he pressed gently. After a brief pause, she nodded. "All right, dinner." She missed the glint in his eyes as he stood, quiet, patient, victorious. After all these years of becoming, Adrian knew one thing with absolute certainty. The waiting was over. Adrian called Evie just as dusk settled over the city. The line connected after a few rings, background noise humming faintly in the distance. "Adrian," Evie said, his voice deeper now, shaped by years of hard work. "You finally remembered you have a brother." Adrian laughed softly. "I was hoping the oil rig in Equatorial Guinea had swallowed you whole."
It's tried, but I'm still standing. What's going on? They fell into an easy rhythm, catching up the way they always did. E.B. talked about long shifts, endless stretches of ocean, and the satisfaction of building something with his own hands. Adrian filled him in on the board meeting, the presentation, and the dinner he had invited her to. There was a knowing pause. "So," E.B. said, "you finally asked Oni out." "Yes," Adrian admitted, "and I'm trying very hard not to mess it up." E.B. chuckled. "Then here's my advice. Don't overwhelm her. Not yet. Don't unload 15 years of feelings in one evening." Adrian closed his eyes briefly. "That obvious, huh?" "Very," E.B. said. "Go slow. Let her be attracted to the man you are now, not the boy who waited. Give her space to choose you." Adrian nodded, even though E.B. couldn't see him. "You're still the wisest person I know." "I had to grow up fast," E.B. replied lightly. "I'll join your company someday. For now, I need to finish building something that's mine." They ended the call with warmth and mutual respect, two men who understood patience and timing. That evening, Adrian dressed carefully.
The oxblood suit was perfectly tailored, the jacket sitting effortlessly on his shoulders. A black shirt lay crisp beneath it, paired with polished black shoes. He studied his reflection briefly, composed, powerful, every inch the billionaire mogul he had worked hard to become. When he arrived at the exclusive restaurant, the VIP section glowed with soft, intimate lighting. Then she walked in. Adrian's breath stalled. Oni wore a simple, deep blue spaghetti-strap dress that clung and flowed in all the right places. A high slit revealed a flash of leg with each step, balanced by a deep V neckline that remained elegant rather than loud. Gold heels caught the light subtly, matched with a small gold clutch. Her earrings were minimal, understated, and perfect. Her hair was pulled back into a sleek ponytail, drawing attention to her graceful neck and radiant skin. She was effortless. She was breathtaking. As she spotted him and smiled, Adrian wondered if he would truly be able to keep his promise, to move slowly, to stay measured. But as he rose to greet her, he reminded himself of Ebby's words. 15 years had led him here. He could afford to take one night at a time. The evening unfolded with a charged ease, laughter threading through every pause, every glance. Adrian complimented her, measured at first, on her brilliance, her command of the room earlier that day. Oni teased him back, her smile quick and knowing, accusing him of hiding behind composure when he clearly enjoyed being impressed. Their banter grew sharper, warmer, layered with something unspoken. Then she studied him more closely, her tone shifting. "You know," she said slowly, "you used to be around us all the time, every weekend, like clockwork. Then you vanished." Her eyes held his. "Why did you stop visiting?" The question cut deeper than she realized. Adrian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Because staying became difficult," he said quietly. "Growing up has consequences." She frowned, sensing there was more, but he didn't offer it. "So," he said, instead, deliberately changing course, "tell me about your company. You've built something remarkable." She did, and as she spoke, her hands animated, her eyes bright with passion, Adrian realized too late that he wasn't listening anymore. He was watching. The way her lips moved, the confidence in her posture, the quiet power she carried without effort. "Adrian," she said, stopping mid-sentence, "are you aware you've been staring at me?" He didn't look away. "I know," he said. Her brows lifted. "Care to explain?" "I can't help it." His voice dropped, honest and unguarded. "You're stunning." The word hit like a confession. Her smile vanished, replaced by raw surprise. "Wait, are you attracted to me?" Adrian held her gaze, something intense and long buried burning there now. He nodded once. "I always have been."
She leaned back slightly, shaken. "But I thought you saw me like a sister, or just friendly." His expression hardened, not with anger, but with truth finally released. "I've never looked at you that way, not once." Silence stretched between them, thick and electric. Oni's breath faltered as realization dawned, slow, unsettling, undeniable. She looked at him again, really looked at him, and the boy she'd known blurred into the man sitting before her. And nothing about the way he was looking at her now felt brotherly. It felt deliberate. It felt dangerous. Oni thanked him for dinner with an awkward little smile, gathering her clutch as though it were a shield. "Thank you," she said softly. "It was lovely, but I should go home." Adrian rose immediately. "Let me take you." She shook her head. "I drove." "Then let me drive behind you," he countered without hesitation, "just to make sure you get home safe." She studied him for a brief moment, then nodded. "All right." She didn't argue, mostly because she wasn't sure she trusted her voice to hold steady. In the car, her hands trembled as she started the engine. She flexed her fingers against the steering wheel, annoyed at herself. The memory of his stare, unyielding, intense, lingered far too vividly. Her heart thudded in her chest, betraying her. "A boy you helped nurture," she told herself firmly. And yet, there was nothing boyish about those broad shoulders, that quiet confidence, those eyes that seemed to smolder when he looked at her. At her gate, she parked and stepped out, willing her pulse to slow. Adrian followed, walking toward her with unhurried intent. "Are you running because you feel it too?" he asked quietly. "I'm not running." She lifted her chin. "You are," he said gently, "and you're lying." Her breath caught. "Adrian!" He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, hear her own rapid beat of heartbeat. "That," he murmured, tapping lightly over her chest, "is not the rhythm of indifference." "Adrian!" she warned, her voice hoarse now. He leaned in just enough, his lips brushing the shell of her ear, a brief, deliberate nip that sent a shiver straight through her. Her breath hitched despite herself. He smiled knowingly as he pulled back. "Good night, Oni," he whispered, "and dream of me."
Or I'll haunt you in them. Then he stepped away, leaving her standing there, heart racing, resolve shaken, and certain that whatever she had just run from was nowhere near finished. Oni shut the door behind her, leaned against it, and pressed a hand to her chest. Her heart was still racing. She dialed her brother without thinking. "Did you know?" she asked the moment the call connected, no greeting, no preamble. "Know what?" Ibi stalled, his voice too careful. "Don't play coy with me," she snapped. "I just had dinner with Ade. Did you know?" There was a pause, then a sigh. "That Ade is in love with you?" Ibi said quietly. "Yeah, I've known for over 13 years. The words knocked the air out of her lungs. "He said he was attracted to me," Oni whispered, still trying to reconcile the man she'd just left with the boy she'd helped raise. "Oops," Ibi whistled softly. "So it finally slipped." "Finally slipped?" she echoed. Ibi didn't bother denying it anymore. He told her everything, how it had started as a harmless crush when Adrian was barely a teenager, how admiration had deepened into something steadier, heavier, how love had crept in quietly and never left. He admitted, with only a hint of guilt, that he'd helped sabotage her relationships over the years. "Before you start," he added quickly, "those guys were creeps, every single one of them." Oni said nothing. Her mind reeled, memories rearranging themselves into a new, unsettling pattern. Adrian's distance, his sudden disappearances, the way he'd always been there and yet never crossed a line. The intensity in his eyes that night at dinner. No, not new, just finally unmasked. Sleep eluded her completely. Hours later, Ibi placed another call, this time to Adrian. "Man, I think I might have accidentally spilled the beans." Silence stretched on the other end of the line.
Then Adrian exhaled slowly. No worries, man. I'm happy it's finally out." They talked briefly and hung up. The next morning, Oni opened her door to a sharp knock and found herself staring at a delivery man struggling under the weight of an enormous bouquet. Yellow roses, her favorite, lush, extravagant, impossibly out of place in their modest neighborhood, and undoubtedly expensive. The scent followed her into the living room as she accepted them, warm and sun-bright, filling the space with a softness she wasn't ready for. "There's no note?" she asked. He shook his head and left her standing there, surrounded by flowers and questions. At exactly 7:15, the doorbell rang again. This time, a sleek car waited outside. The driver handed her a tray, coffee just the way she liked it, and chocolate-infused croissants still warm, their buttery aroma teasing her senses. Her breath caught. Oni reeled. She hadn't fully assimilated what she'd learned the night before, that the boy she once guided, protected, scolded, and encouraged had loved her quietly for years, that the man he'd become now stood firmly in her life, unapologetic and certain. She was 5 years older than he was, and in the world they came from, such relationships were rare, scrutinized, whispered about, often dismissed before they could even begin. Yet standing there, coffee warming her palms and the scent of yellow roses lingering in the air, Oni couldn't deny it anymore. Adrian wasn't asking permission. He was staking his claim, patiently, deliberately, and without fear. Oni walked into the offices of Aurelia Heights Hospitality, her heels clicking softly against the marbled floor. The space exuded quiet luxury, warm lighting, polished stone, and the understated confidence of a business that knew exactly what it was worth. She took the elevator to the 10th floor. The doors opened into Adrian's private suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across the far wall. Dark wood, brushed steel, and glass blended seamlessly. A sitting area flowed into his office, where a wide desk faced the skyline, shelves of carefully chosen books lining one wall, abstract art softening the sharp precision of the room. It felt deliberate, grounded, undeniably his. Adrian stood when he saw her. "Oni, she needed to speak with you," she said, remaining where she was, face to face. He waited. "I'm flattered, truly. What you feel for me, it means more than you know. But I can't accept it. I can't return it." His eyes searched her face. "Why?" She exhaled. "Because you're younger." "That's it?" he asked quietly. "It's not just that," she pressed on, words tumbling now. "Our society frowns on these things. People talk. Your family may not approve. And when I pictured my future, Adrian, it was always with someone older, someone more mature." He stepped closer, backing her gently toward the wall until there was nowhere else to retreat. Not trapped, just held there by his presence. "My family?" he said softly. "They don't choose my life. I do, and they know better than to try." She looked away. He didn't let her. His fingers traced her jaw, tender, reverent. His other hand settled at her waist, warm and steady, then slid to her hips, grounding her as his gaze locked onto hers. "You think maturity is measured in years?" he asked, quietly. "I am mature, just not in the way you're counting. Oni," he continued, voice firm now, "I've built something from the ground up. I walked away when it cost me everything. I waited when I wanted to take you. I'm more disciplined, more intentional, more certain than men twice my age." Her breath hitched. "You dated men older than me," he said, leaning in, his forehead nearly touching hers. "Yet you're afraid of me because I was born a few years later?" She placed her hands on his chest, her palms trembling. "Adrian," he said gently, "I'm not asking you to pretend. I'm asking you to see me for who I am now, not the boy you once knew." For a long moment, the room held its breath. The city shimmered beyond the glass, indifferent to the battle waging between reason and desire. Oni closed her eyes, and Adrian waited, steady, unyielding, and utterly certain that the future she'd imagined might already be standing right in front of her. I just can't. I'm sorry, she whispered. And then she was gone. Oni practically ran out of the office, the echo of her heels fading far too quickly. Adrian stood where she'd left him, the space she had occupied still warm, still charged, now painfully empty. Something tight and unfamiliar wrapped around his chest, fear settling deep in his bones. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment, shaping himself into a man he believed would finally be enough for her. And she had still walked away. His hand shook as he reached for his phone. Ibi picked up on the second ring. "It's about Oni, right?" he said with a sigh. "Because you know not to call me at this time. I'm at work." "It's an emergency," Adrian said hoarsely. There was a pause. "Give me a second." He heard movement, then a muffled sound of a door closing. "Okay, talk to me." Adrian poured it all out. Her visit, her words, the way she looked at him like she was fighting herself, and the way she had fled. His voice cracked when he admitted his fear. "I don't know what to do, Ibi. I've waited my whole life for her. What if I've lost her for good?" Ibi was quiet for a moment, then said firmly, "You haven't." "How can you be so sure?" "Because she didn't say she didn't feel anything. She said she couldn't. That's not rejection. That's fear. So what do I do?" "Go to her place," Ibi said without hesitation. "Spend a few days there." Adrian frowned. "You're sure that's a good idea?"
Yes, Ebi said. It's the anniversary of our parents' death. She won't push you away then. Tell her I asked you to come, that I'm worried about her. Adrian exhaled slowly. And Adrian, Ebi added. Yes? Don't disappear on her. Don't go quiet. She needs to know you're still there, even if she's scared. Adrian closed his eyes, resolve settling in where fear had been. Okay, he said quietly. I won't. Oni was ready to retire for the night. She hadn't eaten all day, didn't have the appetite, let alone the energy to cook. March 25th always did that to her. It drained her, hollowed her out, left memories too heavy to carry. She padded around her apartment in tiny bum shorts and a bulky sweater that slipped off one shoulder, baring warm skin. Her long black hair was pulled back loosely, exhaustion written into every movement. The doorbell rang again. She froze. It was past 9 p.m. Her heart thudded as she crept to the door and peeked through the peephole. Adrian. Her heart slammed violently against her ribcage. After the way she'd run out on him that morning, she wasn't surprised, just utterly unprepared. She drew in a shaky breath and opened the door. One look at him made her heart skip. He was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been dragged through the day and come out the other side, barely holding it together. His hair was rumpled, the top button of his shirt undone, sleeves pushed up. The fabric stretched perfectly over lean muscle, all restrained power and quiet intensity. He looked breathtaking. "It's March 25th, he said gently, his voice disarming. "Ebi is worried about you." A pause, then a faint smile. "I come bearing gifts." Before she could respond, he stepped inside, as if he already belonged there, warmth and presence filling the room instantly. "Please get my other bag, will you?" he called over his shoulder casually. Oni stood rooted to the spot, heart racing, her carefully built defenses already beginning to crack. Oni carried the small overnight bag into the apartment and shut the door softly behind her. By the time she turned around, Adrian was already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, moving with easy familiarity as he dished food onto plates. There was rice, grilled fish glazed with pepper sauce, sautéed vegetables, and a steaming bowl of hot pepper soup, the aroma rich and comforting, spicy enough to clear the chest and warm the soul. The kitchen filled quickly with the sounds of clinking cutlery and the hum of quiet efficiency. "I'm famished," Adrian announced lightly, as though it were the most natural thing in the world for him to be there, filling her space, anchoring it. Oni leaned against the doorway and watched him, something soft unfurling in her chest. She was grateful, deeply so, for his presence. Tonight, of all nights, she truly didn't want to be alone. "Go ahead and eat," he said over his shoulder. "I'll take a quick shower." He brushed past her on his way to the guest room, close enough that she caught the faint scent of his cologne and something unmistakably him. Oni poured herself a glass of the sweet red wine he'd brought, her favorite, and sipped slowly, letting it calm her nerves as she waited. When he returned, his hair was still damp from the shower, droplets clinging to his lashes. His chest was bare, skin warm and golden, and he wore only black silk pajama trousers that sat low on his hips. She looked away quickly, pulse skittering. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't demand filling. The food was grounding, the pepper soup especially, hot, soothing, familiar. Afterward, they moved to the living room. Oni curled into one end of the couch and put on a rom-com she'd chosen, something light, something safe. Adrian sat beside her, close but not crowding her, and they talked about everything and nothing. Their childhood, ridiculous memories of Ebby, ideas for company expansion that somehow blended seamlessly into jokes about the weather. Adrian topped up her glass whenever it dipped low, remembering very clearly that alcohol lowered her inhibitions. He didn't rush her, didn't press, just stayed steady and present, letting the night soften her edges. And for the first time all day, Oni felt like she could breathe. He shifted closer on the sofa and gently drew her in, settling her head against his chest. Oni didn't protest. The wine had softened her edges, quieted the arguments in her head. She murmured something he didn't quite catch, and he responded by stroking her side slowly, almost absent-mindedly, as though memorizing her shape. Heat unfurled low in her belly, slow and insistent. Her fingers drifted over his bare chest, tracing the firm planes of muscle without thinking, discovering the way his body reacted to even the lightest touch. "Oni," he groaned softly, "you're driving me crazy." His voice was a whisper now as he bent, capturing her lips. The kiss began gently, tentative, as if he were giving her room to pull away. She opened her eyes mid-kiss, met his gaze, and the raw hunger she saw there stole his breath. Something in him snapped. He kissed her again, deeper this time, with intention and heat, all restraint stripped away. It wasn't careful or chaste anymore. It was urgent, claiming, as though he were announcing to the world that she mattered, that she had always mattered, that she was his. Oni's hand slid lower, slow and unthinking, fingers brushing the buttons of his trousers before he caught himself. His body went taut, breath turning uneven, almost painful in his chest. He stilled completely, as though one more movement would undo them both. "What are you doing?" he whispered, his voice rough, barely holding together. She lifted her face to his, those wide, dark, slow eyes, soft, luminous, devastating in the way they always were. They searched his face, vulnerable and brave all at once. "Make love to me," she breathed. Adrian closed his eyes and exhaled, a deep, trembling sound torn from him, like a man wrestling his own instincts into submission. When he opened them again, his gaze was tender, aching with want and restraint. "You wanted to wait," he said quietly. "You remember." His thumb traced the curve of her cheek, reverent, grounding himself in the simple act. "You walked away from others because they couldn't respect that. I won't be like them." His forehead rested against hers. "I can wait. You're mine, and I can wait for you." She nodded, though the disappointment she tried to hide shimmered indecipherably in her eyes. Without another word, he gathered her into his arms, lifting her as though she weighed nothing, as though she was something precious he needed to protect, even from himself. He carried her to the bedroom, laid her down gently, and pulled a blanket around them both. Drawing her close, he pressed a lingering kiss to her hair, then another to her temple, his arms firm and warm around her, anchoring her to him. "Thank you," she whispered into the quiet. He tilted his head slightly. "For what?" "For choosing me," she said softly, "for respecting my wishes, even when I nearly gave them away." A faint, tender smile touched his lips. "You never gave anything away," he murmured. "Now rest." He tightened his hold just enough to make her feel safe, drawing her deeper into the shelter of his arms, until her breathing evened out and her body relaxed fully against him, held, cherished, and unhurried. Adrian woke early the next morning, long before the sun had fully claimed the sky. He moved quietly through the house, making breakfast, the domesticity of it settling over him with an unfamiliar but welcome warmth. When everything was ready, he poured a cup of coffee and carried it back upstairs, the steam curling invitingly into the cool morning air.
Oni stirred as he approached, waking slowly, gracefully, as though rising from a pleasant dream. "Hey there, sleepyhead," he murmured, pressing a soft kiss to her cheek. "Hey yourself," she muttered, pushing herself up slightly as she looked at him. Morning suited Adrian far too well. He was still bare-chested, sleep having left his muscles loose and unguarded. The subtle ripples of strength make her heart skip and her resolve wobble. For a fleeting moment, she regretted her vow to wait, regretted it fiercely. He was beautiful, undeniably so, and the fact that he wanted her, truly wanted her, still caught her off guard every time. "I brought you coffee," he said, handing her the mug, "to wake you properly. Shower, then come downstairs for breakfast." She nodded, cardling the cup in her hands. "Thank you." He smiled, lingering just enough to brush his fingers against hers before turning and leaving the room.
Oni showered quickly, letting the warm water steady her thoughts. When she dressed, she chose an emerald green dress that hugged her perfectly, the color deep and luminous against her skin. She pulled her hair back into a sleek ponytail, slipped on gold heels, and headed downstairs, their soft clicks announcing her approach. Adrian heard her before he saw her. When he finally looked up, the sight of her stole the breath clean from his lungs. He rose from the dining table without thinking, drawn to her as though by instinct alone. Closing the distance between them, he pulled her into his arms, unapologetic, possessive, and kissed her fiercely, as if claiming something already known to be his. "You're mine," he whispered against her lips. Oni didn't hesitate. She nodded, her voice steady, certain. "I'm yours." And in that moment there was no doubt between them, only intention, desire, and the quiet promise of everything still to come. Ibi called almost immediately after he'd summoned Oni to his office, as though perfectly on cue. "So?" he asked, skipping all pleasantries. "How did it go?" "It was great," Adrian replied, a smile already tugging at his lips. He went on to recount the previous night, choosing his words carefully, keeping the details safe and respectful. There were things he wasn't about to share, certain moments that belonged only to him and Oni. He wasn't ready to tell her brother just how close he'd come to losing himself with her. Ibi laughed, warm and satisfied. "Congratulations, man. You finally got the love of your life. You owe me." "I do," Adrian agreed easily. "Big time. And I always pay my debts." They ended the call with mutual laughter, and Adrian leaned back in his chair, the smile lingering on his face long after the line went dead. The weeks that followed passed in a dizzying blur. Adrian had always known Oni was brilliant and breathtaking, but it seemed that love had sharpened her edge even further. With quiet confidence, she began rolling out her development strategies, guiding the company's transition into aviation with seamless precision. Her initiatives were welcomed almost immediately. Routes expanded, demand surged. Within months, their planes were fully booked for the next 6 months, profits soaring by over 100%. The board was ecstatic, and Adrian was undone. The more time he spent with her, the deeper he fell. She listened to him, truly listened. She took care of him in ways he hadn't realized he needed, attentive almost to a fault. When he introduced her to his parents, she charmed them effortlessly, disarming their reservations with grace and quiet strength. For the first time in his life, everything seemed to be aligning: love, work, purpose. He was so happy that it frightened him. Some nights, as he watched her sleep or listened to her talk about the future with calm certainty, a single thought would surface, unbidden and unsettling. Was it really possible to be this happy and keep it?
Watch out for how Adrian and Oni's story unfolds in Part 2. Secrets will surface, loyalties will be tested, and nothing will ever be the same. Please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next.